රැස් විහිදෙන ජීවිතේ.
Vigil මහත්තයාගේ මහින්ද මහත්තයාගේ සැපත කියලා.
හොඳයි ඉතින් සෞභාග්‍යයේ දැක්ම හොඳයි.
ඒ කාපු කිරිබත් වලට කෑවට වැඩිය හොඳයි කැලයක් ගන්න කී නියගලාලයක් අරගෙන හාරගෙන කෑවන. දැන් විසිලුත් නෑ බල්ටිත් නෑ.
The waiting queues continued across Sri Lanka today as well. Bringing you the latest in these stories, a very good evening and welcome to Primetime News on TV1. I'm Michaela Fernando and joining us via Zoom is sign language interpreter Brian De Cruz. Before we head into more news in detail, here a look at your headlines.
News First headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
Gas shortage intensifies. More than 1,000 eateries closed across the country. Protests demanding for fuel in several areas. Growing queues for diesel. Energy crisis will end in a week. An assurance from Minister Lokuge. Basil Gammanpilla outlined reasons for crisis. Gammanpilla's incompetence led to the crisis. Government MPs point the finger. Enough is enough. A group of disappointed citizens take to the streets. India puts forward loan conditions. Urges Sri Lanka to conduct the provincial council elections. Russia continues assault on Ukraine after ceasefire. India thrashes Sri Lanka in the first test match.
News First headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
In your top story, a shortage of gas has caused several issues in the country at present. Gas companies say they do not have the dollars to import new consignments. A gas shortage has left many dealership stores across the country closed at present. This has forced many people to travel long distances in search of gas cylinders.
පාරිභෝගිකයාට දෙන්න මට ගෑස් ලැබෙන්න ඕන. මට ගෑස් ලැබෙන්නේ නැත්නම් මේක කවුරු හරි වගකීම් කෙනෙක් ඉන්න තැන වග කියන්න ඕනේ රජය සම්පූර්ණයෙන්.
අපිට ඉතින් කරන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. රාජ්‍ය තන්ත්‍රයේ තමයි මේක කරන්න ඕන.
Gas dealership stores say they are running out of stocks. Restaurants and bakeries are now shutting down as the gas cylinder shortage worsens.
කඩ 3-4කට ගියා. කඩ නැහැ. කඩ ඇරලා තිබුණාට ඒවයි ගෑස් නැති නිසා ඒගොල්ලන්ට කැම දෙන්න විදිහක් නැහැලු.
අදත් අපි කැම පොඩ්ඩයි දාලා තියෙන්නේ. දැන් හෙට ඇත්තට වැඩ කරන්න ගෑස් නැහැ. අද හම්බුනේ නැත්නම් හෙට වැඩ කරන්න හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැ අපිටත්.
බඩු හිඟයි ඒ අතර විදුලියක් නැහැ කියන්නේ ඉතින් බේකරි කර්මාන්තයේ බුදු සරණයි.
අපිට තියෙන සියලුම ප්‍රශ්න.
We are facing every possible problem. Bread is sold for 150 rupees in some parts of Colombo. More than 1,000 bakeries have been closed because of these issues. All bakeries will have to shut down if this continues.
තව සතියක් මේ විදියට ගියොත් මුළු ලංකාවේ තියෙන සියලුම බේකරි ටික වහන්න වෙනවා අපිට.
The problem has affected other sectors as well.
මාර්තු මාසයේ කියන්නේ
March is a hectic month for all catering services. They're helpless as they can't deliver the meals to the consumers from whom they obtain payments. Our workers are in queues rather than working.
වැඩ කරනවට වැඩිය අපි පෝලිං වල
Litrogas says it is finding it difficult to settle $16 million due for gas that was imported under a long-term contract. They say they are unable to unload 2 gas consignments that have reached the country. Lux Gas limited its daily gas cylinder supplies to 2,000 as it is facing issues in opening letters of credit. Meanwhile, long queues for fuel were also seen in several parts of the country today as well.
This footage shows a helicopter carrying a VVIP taking off near the Kurunagala-Dambulla main road as people continue to stand in a queue at the Pollathapitiya fuel station. We are in hunger as we wait in line for fuel. The VVIPs are travelling by air. Only 10 litres of fuel is sold to us, but expensive jet fuel is sold to them. Fuel is being sold to helicopters. I have been here since 5 this morning. I brought 3 cans with me. They say only fuel up to 1,000 rupees will be sold to us. Our children are in hunger. They pump fuel to the vehicles of all VIPs, but we have to stand in queues. Long queues have been seen at the filling station for 5 days. Fuel that was unloaded from 2 diesel ships is now being distributed among filling stations. Buses were seen leaving the petroleum terminals in Sabugaskanda, Mutrajawala and Kolonnawa. We are supplying fuel now. The diesel is being distributed without an issue. We don't know what will happen in future. But long queues for fuel were seen in many areas today as well. They say the fuel shortage is over. The President and the Prime Minister tell that, but the people are in queues. They are changing ministers. We need fuel even after they change everyone. The fuel crisis has affected farmers in rural Sri Lanka as well. We are in queues and we are unable to reap our harvest. They didn't give us fertilizer. They're holding back stocks. Filling stations in Colombo and its suburbs had not received diesel stocks, although long queues were not seen there today.
A vigil was held in Rajagiriya and Kohuwala a short while ago to raise awareness and stand up against the failures of the government.
The past few days has not been the easiest for many Sri Lankans. People had to endure a shortage of essential food items, medicines, fuel, and most importantly they had to go through many blackouts. Right now I'm near the flyover in Rajagiriya where a special vigil is being held. Now what's unique about this demonstration is that the people who are taking part in it are not affiliated to any political party. They say that they are simply ordinary Sri Lankans who are voicing their objection towards the regarding the present condition of the economy and the country. Tell me, what message are you hoping to deliver through this demonstration?
Well, what I'd like to say is that we feel for the whole country. It's not that we suddenly woke up. We've been feeling for the longest time. We feel for the farmers, we feel for the fishermen, we feel for the entire country. Where are we going? We need leadership. We need leaders who care for us, not just for themselves. We need leadership.
I'm 66 years and I had to get onto the streets because of the suffering the people are going through in the country. We cannot bear this anymore. So I'm telling you, the first time we got onto the streets.
The vigil in Kohuwala was held along the Jai Singha Road.
We came here willingly. We are on the street because of the situation in the country.
Meanwhile, the Ministry of Power says it is planning to impose power cuts only for a few hours or to avoid power outages tomorrow. The Secretary to the Ministry of Power, Wasantha Pereira, said the decision was made based on fuel stocks received by the country. In more local news, Energy Minister Gamini Lokuge says power cuts won't have to be imposed from today. He says the fuel shortage would be over by next Wednesday.
We have dispatched Bowsers to supply fuel to all filling stations, but that isn't enough. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation's distribution division is working even today. We can address the shortage if we distribute fuel today and tomorrow. There is no petrol shortage. All filling stations have petrol. We have supplied the fuel required to address the power crisis. There won't be a need to impose power cuts today. We have provided the diesel required to generate power. We have given 6,000 metric tons so far.
The minister also commented on the fuel stocks that are to be received from India.
We will receive diesel, petrol and aviation fuel after the 15th of March. We believe there won't be a need to impose power cuts. We have made plans for that. We can resolve the fuel shortage by next Wednesday.
India has called for a plan from Sri Lanka on how the country is going to overcome its economic crisis in the long term as a condition for granting the $1 billion credit line. A report published by the Sunday Times states that these conditions include a long list of its economic and strategic demands for implementation in the north and the east of Sri Lanka.
In the report, the Sunday Times states that the Indian government is awaiting the green light from Sri Lanka on the economic action plan aimed at long-term recovery for the country's foreign exchange and debt repayment crisis, and to the Indian list of demands to start economic projects in Sri Lanka. The report adds that the Indian demands involve a string of maritime security agreements that will strengthen India's strategic interests, particularly around the eastern Trincomalee harbour. According to the report, the conditions laid down by India also include starting a renewable energy solar power project in and around Sampur near Trincomalee, the reopening of the Palali airport for commercial operations, and entering into a renewable energy field in the Delft Island.
We call upon Sri Lanka to take the necessary step to address the legitimate aspirations of the Tamil community, including by carrying forward the process of reconciliation and implementation of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution of Sri Lanka to ensure that the fundamental freedoms and human rights of all its citizens are fully protected. We will continue to urge the Sri Lankan government for the early conduct of elections to the provincial councils in keeping with its commitments to devolution of power.
India approved the 500 million credit line after the agreement on handing over part of the Trincomalee oil tanks was finalized and signed. Against such a backdrop, what sacrifices will we have to make this time to secure a $1 billion credit line to import food and medicine? How did we end up in a position where we have to play to the tunes of foreign nations? Despite warnings from economic experts, the government took steps to pay back a $500 million worth sovereign bond in January. The government has still not responded to the allegations that the settling of these payments largely benefited a select few individuals, as the bonds were sold at a very low price on the secondary market. In the meantime, Sri Lanka has been facing a serious shortage of goods, including fertilizer, gas, fuel, cement, milk powder and several other essential goods. The saga following the ban on chemical fertilizer ended, with Sri Lanka suffering a loss of $6.9 million after paying for a shipment of organic fertilizer from China. Underhand deals amounting to millions of dollars were taking place while Sri Lankans were experiencing shortages in gas, fuel, power and cement. This was achieved by making spot purchases instead of handing out long-term tenders. It is public knowledge that spot purchases enable a few select individuals to make large profits at the expense of the best interest of the general public. At a time when the people of our country are burdened with crisis upon crisis, and a few individuals continue to make massive profits at the expense of the general public, will the future generations of our country lose the opportunity to enjoy the benefits of Sri Lanka's national assets.
A crisis has erupted among political parties amidst the power crisis in the country. The issues within political parties have seen attempts to gain political advantage by criticizing each other. Amidst all of this, former Energy Minister Udaya Gammampila says the crises in the country have been created. He made these remarks during the 10 Questions program on News First.
The economy has collapsed. When people don't have food, medicine or fuel, they will say the country's assets will be sold to the US as a way out. If anyone opposes that, the parents of children who are in hunger will criticize them for doing it. In that way, they can bring the protests under control. Basil Rajapaksa is pushing the country in that direction. He is not just a US citizen. He is the ugly American. There is only one person like that in the entire world.
Basil Rajapaksa, American pamanak noveයි, අවලස්සන ඇමරිකානුවා the ugly American එක්කෙනා ඉන්නේ. ලංකාවටත් එකයි ලෝකෙටත් එකයි.
මහ බැංකුව අධිපතිවරයා සහ ආණ්ඩුවේ ප්‍රබලීන් බොහොම බැරෑරුම් විදියට කියනවා අපි මේක ගොඩ දානවා. ගොඩයත්වා කියලා කියව.
We can't overcome this situation by simply saying that we will. A proper plan is needed. We have some respect for the central bank governor. He prepared a plan within his capacity called the roadmap to recovery. It was a good plan. I don't dismiss that there were shortcomings. That plan was prepared in October, but no discussion has taken place on that.
අද වනතුරු කිසිම සාකච්ඡාවක්වත් සිදු වෙලා නැහැ.
ඒ කියන්නේ මුදල් ඇමතිවරයා ඒ road map එකට කැමති නැහැ කියන එකද?
ඔබ විශ්වාස කරනවද?
Would you believe if I said that no one can speak at cabinet meetings? When someone questions the finance minister, he shouts in anger. He doesn't like anyone to challenge his plans. People who think they know everything are usually like that.
සියල්ලදත් කට්ටිය සමාන එහෙමනේ.
The government is blaming former Minister Udaya Gammampila for the fuel crisis. Gammampila didn't perform well as a minister. He failed. When we asked for fuel from the energy minister, he said he is facing the same issue. He said there isn't enough money to import fuel. An energy minister is appointed to find money to import fuel. The minister of power was appointed as the energy minister. Now we can see fuel coming to the country. He knew how to perform those duties properly. The Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna is hurling accusations against the SLFP. They are focusing only on their sustenance by making the country unstable. Therefore, no one has decided on behalf of the country to join the SLFP. We believe that if Udaya Gammampila had spoken with more responsibility, the energy crisis and the trend of queues could have been avoided. I feel he unknowingly provoked a group to create a crisis.
The Sri Lanka Freedom Party has issued a warning to other parties.
We have not spoken yet. If they continue to criticize the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and our leaders, we will respond to them in the future. The Sri Lanka Freedom Party is a separate political party. It's not something that is limited to 14 MPs. The Sri Lanka Freedom Party is rising up fast. At 1:30 p.m. on Tuesday, the SLFP parliamentary group will attend a meeting chaired by Maithripala Sirisena. We will attend a meeting with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at 4 p.m. We will discuss the problems faced by the people. We point out the mistakes with genuine intentions and not to cause the government's downfall. We hope to guide the government on the right path.
Opposition parties are responding to the political crisis.
Newspapers are running headlines saying that Basil works for the US. Who has said that? It was former Minister Vimal Weeravansha. If Basil is working for the United States, why are they retaining him as the finance minister of this country? The president called for a report to the Pandora Papers. Where is the report? Did they tell the people whether there is any fraud? There is the garlic scam, sugar scam, coconut oil scam, nano fertilizer scam, and more recently, scams relating to roads. We wish to tell those in the government who are leaving to expose the secrets.
During the
election, Vimal Weeravansha and Gammampila said that they will put forward a combination similar to Mahathir Mohamad and Lee Kuan Yew. They said great intellectuals are being produced in Sri Lanka. They did not say anything about a US citizen then. They didn't create fear about the United States. There is no point in crying to the people after being cut by the sword they sharpened.
Former provincial councillor of the JVP, Nalin Hevage, expressed these views at a media briefing held in Galle today.
A look back of some projects carried out by Gammadda. A community hall in Galin Bidurwava, Anuradhapura. A bridge in Niluva in Galle. Refurbishment of a road in Galledanta in Padulla. Refurbishment of a primary school building in Athankadavala in Polonnaruwa. A community hall in Anuradhapura. A water purification system in Nochiagama. A water purification system in Tamuttegama. A library at the Kumakandana Primary School in Wilgamua. Gammadda's projects continue to grow by the day. Gammadda, by the people, for the people.
Why did Russia violate the ceasefire with Ukraine?
More headline-making news on the other side of this short commercial break. Stay tuned.
Register today for a Zoom workshop on new technology in Sinhala.
Hack the world with cyber techniques on the 10th of March at 3 p.m.
Register via 0777 600 20.
Organized by Slit Institute.
Tech Bus.
Main sponsor.
Slit Knowledge University, challenging convention and redefining education.
Welcome back to the news. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa says a country that has collapsed can be revived if politicians make sacrifices. He made these remarks in Kandy today.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa visited the Chief Sanganayaka of the Malwatu chapter of the Siam Maha sect, Most Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Sumangala Thero, this morning. He then visited the Chief Sanganayaka of the Asgiriya chapter of the Siam sect, Most Venerable Warakagoda Sri Jnanaratana Thero, and obtained blessings. The opposition leader also visited Most Venerable Kappetiyagoda Sirivimala Thero of the Gatambe Rajopavanarama temple. The country can become prosperous once again. That journey requires sacrifices. Under the Samagi Jana Balawega government, those sacrifices will be made by the President, Prime Minister and Cabinet Ministers. We will lead by example. We saw certain changes in ministerial positions. Will the dollar reserves increase by changing ministers? Will fuel queues disappear? Will queues for diesel, petrol and kerosene disappear? Did the cost of gas cylinders reduce? Will farmers receive fertilizer? These are similar to teledramas. You can't solve the issues in the country by deceiving the public. The Samagi Jana Balawega held a protest in Kadawatha demanding a solution to fuel and power crises. Another protest was held at the Ambalangoda town. The Samagi Jana Balawega held another protest in Kotmale. They distributed leaflets on the fuel crisis in Navalapitiya as well.
The Frontline Youth Union held a protest in Kurunegala today.
They have prepared an agreement to sell off the oil tank farm in Trincomalee. The government that spoke highly on patriotism has allowed this agreement to be valid for 50 years until 2072. People are standing in queues to buy fuel for 500 rupees. They can increase the fuel stocks in the country. We have the Trincomalee harbour, which is a natural resource. There are 99 out of 101 tanks built by the British there. We don't need the entire 99 tanks. We can retain our stocks using just 14 oil tanks. What sort of a country is this?
Journalists questioned the police on whether action was taken against a group that played a song at a filling station.
මට එහෙම වාර්තාවීමක් ගන්න මම ඒක ගැන හොයලා බලලා කියන්න. Thank you.
Former MP Hirunika Premachandra spoke to journalists on a protest she attended yesterday. The Samagi Vanitha Balavegaya had held the demonstration in Mirihana last afternoon.
We saw that the people were afraid of the Rajapaksa family, including Mahinda Rajapaksa. A group of women eliminated that fear yesterday. About 40 to 50 people started to cause a commotion opposite my house. That is all they are capable of. They say they'll travel in bullock carts if there is no diesel, and they ask us not to raise our voice against the president. They say they'll somehow feed their kids without milk powder. They say they will build houses out of clay if there is no cement. They want us to stop criticizing the president. They won't make demands from the president. They are waiting patiently for a solution. They say they can use a kerosene lamp for light just as they did 70 years ago. They are willing to eat sand if there is no rice. They are not prepared to go against the president. This is what they have to say. These are the slaves of Sri Lanka. CID officers have visited the homes of some women who were part of our protest. They had been sent to ask questions on who was involved in it. There is no need to ask questions. We went opposite their home to tell our problems.
For several weeks, Russian troops were stationed on the borders with Ukraine, sparking concerns of a possible invasion. On February 21st, Russia recognized Donetsk and Luhansk in eastern Ukraine as independent nations. And then, 2 days later,
мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Minutes after the speech, Russia began sending its first missiles into Ukraine. Since then, the UN says at least 227 people have been killed, with 525 injured, including scores of children. More than 1.3 million Ukrainians have fled to neighboring countries, mostly to Poland. 2 nuclear power plants and the city of Kherson are now under Russian control. Access to Facebook and Twitter remains blocked, with many media outlets like CNN halting broadcasts from there. But Ukraine's president has vowed to fight. Countries like the US, UK and Germany have sent military aid to Ukraine along with other supplies. But what Ukraine wants now is a no-fly zone, and the NATO has turned down the request. Russia declared a ceasefire in 2 areas of Ukraine yesterday. But what has happened since then?
In the latest development, Russia resumed its attacks on the Ukrainian cities of Mariupol and Volnovakh after a temporary ceasefire yesterday.
Says it has ended a humanitarian ceasefire in the Ukrainian cities of Mariupol and Volnovakh.
Сегодня с 10:00 московского времени по просьбе украинской стороны в районе городов Мариуполя и Волновахи.
The ceasefire, which was declared at 10 a.m. Russian time yesterday to allow people to leave those areas safely, ended at 6 p.m. In the meantime, hundreds of men have been queuing in the Ukrainian capital Kyiv to sign up to join the armed forces. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says his people won't give up.
Our people, our Ukrainians, are not retreating, are not giving up, are not stopping the resistance. They shout to the occupiers, go home like a Russian ship.
Visa and MasterCard have announced they will suspend operations in Russia. This means Visa or MasterCards won't work in Russia. Cards issued in Russia won't work overseas as well. Ukraine's president has appealed from US senators for more planes after NATO turned down its request to declare a no-fly zone. But Russian President Vladimir Putin has criticized any moves to declare a no-fly zone over Ukraine.
Any move in this direction will be viewed by us as a participation in the armed conflict of whichever side whose territory will pose a threat to our service members. That very second we will view them as participants of the military conflict and would not matter what members they are.
11 days since the war broke out, at least 351 civilians are confirmed to have been killed in Ukraine and another 707 are wounded. Tomorrow, delegations from both nations will participate in the third round of talks to end the conflict.
India recorded a massive victory against Sri Lanka in the first test match that ended in Mohali today. The visitors faced defeat by an innings and 222 runs.
India enforced the...
Sri Lanka could only score 174 in response to India's mammoth first innings total of 574 for 8 wickets. Batting again to avoid an innings defeat, Sri Lanka lost its first 7 wickets for 121 runs. Skipper Dimuth Karunaratne scored 27 while Dhananjay De Silva scored 30. Charith Asalanka scored 20 while Angela Matthews contributed with 28. 6 of Sri Lanka's batsmen could not pass double figures in the second innings. Niroshan Dickwella top scored with 51 runs that included 9 boundaries. Sri Lanka was bowled out for 178 in the second innings, with Ravichandran Ashwin and Ravindra Jadeja bagging 4 wickets each.
He's still the less.
Ravindra Jadeja was picked as the man of the match.
And what a match he's had, Ravindra Jadeja.
Veteran actor Bertie Gunatilaka breathed his last today. He was 98 years old at the time of his demise. We leave you tonight with a look back at his life of this amazing actor. Take care and good night.